Hey guys, FilthyRobot here, bringing you another guides, tips, and tricks video. This time we are talking about the Eldar mid-game heroes. So let's take a look at who we're talking about. We're talking about Jane Zar, Autark, Kyrie here, and Warp Spiders. So let's get right into it. What does Jane Zar do? And what's so great about Jane Zar? Jane Zar is actually a fairly powerful Eldar hero. At 4 points, she's a little bit slower to the field than the 2 or 3 point heroes, of course, which means she's a little bit late to the early game. Or if you're still running around with Banshees in the mid game, I mean, that starts to be 6 or 7 points in. Melee units trail off a little bit in efficiency across the course of the game, in my opinion, especially the low hit point early infantry melee units, because you've either won the field or you're starting to fight pretty much larger scale mass battles with them. But this is still some time to make them to keep their power up using Jane Zar. So what does Jane Zar do? She has a line nuke that throws a nuke in a line, and then it returns to her. So she shoots it off. She runs around. It comes back to her. This player here managed to miss all the Space Marines she was trying to kill by moving. So you do have to be worried about your positioning on that. It does normal damage. It's a decent sized nuke. It's very strong versus infantry. She has a jumping dash, where basically she dashes in a position. If she hits something if she hits a hostile along the way, she leaps up and spews out a bunch of little damaging bullets that don't do that much damage but do a little bit of damage, which makes her immobile. She's fairly high health, coming in at 2,400 health, which is a chunk for Eldar. Not super good, not super bad, I guess. I guess it's not as much as I was thinking. I thought she had a little bit more health than that. And she does 100 and what is it? Where is she? 114 normal melee DPS, but no range damage. So she should be beating on people as much as possible. She has Battle Scream, which slows enemies when she hits them, and she has when she charges into them, rather. And she critical strikes give her a reduction on her cooldowns for her abilities, and of course she's almost always going to have Fleet of Foot near Webway Gate. What this means is that she is another power boost for Banshees, basically. You can't get away. You already having a very hard time getting away from these striking scorpions plus Banshees. If you now add Jane Zar on top of that, you have another snare, you have another nuke, you have an extremely mobile hero with very high melee DPS, who also gives a really powerful ability here with her doctrine towards Banshees. So what it does is Howling Banshees become stealth if they enter stealth cover and Jane Zar is deployed. And what that means is that the Banshees can then, they have a channeled ability that takes like a 2-second build up, and then they fling themselves forward in this kind of line nuke. And then line nuke actually hurts quite a bit, especially if you get hit by like 2 Banshee squads. And the way you deal with this is you dodge the nuke, right? And you can see that because the Banshees do a little charge up animation when they're doing that. When they're invisible, you can't see that, which means that when Jane Zar is on the field, you're going to get nuked all the time by fucking invisible Banshees. They'll come out of stealth as they nuke you, but when they're channeling that nuke, they won't show you that they're channeling the nuke, which is really dangerous. Her other ability doesn't seem as good to me. When Wraithblades die, they grant stacking bonuses to surviving squad members, increasing damage and speed. Wraithblades are not that great of a unit, so I don't see a whole lot of use for them. So that benefit doesn't seem as useful to me, especially since they're a tier 3 unit, which means they're only going to be at the very late stages of the game. However, Banshees and Howling Banshees are a very early game unit, and you're going to see that benefit throughout the course of the game, particularly in the early game, which is going to help make your late game even stronger. Excuse me. All right, let's take a look at Autark Kyrie here. I don't think that much of this hero. He's a little bit difficult to play. He does all right damage. He does 51 melee true damage, and he does something like 22 ranged normal damage. The range damage clearly isn't very good. His melee damage is okay. He does have a critical strike ability, which causes shield and shield regeneration in a circle. That's okay, I suppose, but who's going to be in that circle? I guess you're supposed to combo him with Banshees again if he's attacking, but man, he doesn't feel like a Banshee hero. He's also 5 points, which means he's even more expensive than Jane Zar. His abilities are very weird. Eldritch Winds is his primary ability here, which is he casts a cyclone on an area. The cyclone does slow and damage in an area. And if he recalls that, I guess I could have watched the end of that. He can put out 3 of these cyclones, up to 3 of these cyclones, and then if you have 3 of those cyclones out and you hit Q, he jumps up into the air. He becomes a skimmer unit, which gives him skimmer mobility, and it pulls all of his cyclones in. And basically, any unit that the cyclone passes through, so if he shoots it past an infantry squad and it pulls the cyclones in, it pulls the units underneath him. And when he's flying around, you can deploy plasma grenades. So after you pulled them to you, he floats around and bombs them. Let's see if they'll give us a visual of this. There's him flying around. And now show us the plasma bomb grenade, please. Yep, you're flying over there. Fantastic. How about the grenades? Here we go. So you would never do this, because this would never fucking happen. But what you could do is you could deploy your cyclones, pull them towards you, and then bomb them after they've all lined up on you. It is fairly decent damage versus infantry. It does disrupt the infantry quite heavily. It keeps them out of position. It keeps them taking damage. It keeps them not being able to use their own abilities, which are fairly strong. But it's not a lot of damage. He himself doesn't do a lot of damage. You're not going to really want him in melee. He's not super tanky. I mean, he's got a fair amount of health at 3,900 health, but that's not all that much. But the skimmer ability does let him get away fairly well. He's a bit of a disruption hero, but kind of a weird disruption hero that requires a lot of micro and comes pretty late to be caring that much about disrupting infantry. I'd be curious to see what he does in an Eldar versus Eldar match, because he has normal armor, which makes him a little bit more resilient versus Wraithguard. And I bet you he really fucks up Wraithguard with that ability, because he gets to move them around and screw them over and pull them out of position. I'd kind of be curious to see. He might have some strengths and some abilities that would be useful circumstantially that might not be immediately apparent, just because that is such a powerful ability. Any movement style ability that moves enemy units is pretty damn strong. However, I guess it somewhat depends on how close you have to be to deploy Eldritch Winds, and stuff like that. So sometimes I see him as a bit of a win more a hero. When my opponent's already winning and they deploy him, they do clean up infantry, but when I get a critical mass of infantry, he can't get close enough to do anything. So let's take a look at his doctrines. When he's deployed, Dire Avengers gain 2 charges of Plasma Grenade. Plasma Grenade is great, but he comes out pretty late, especially if you've already picked up another hero before him, which you almost certainly will for a 5-point hero, which means probably Dire Avengers are all dead at this point. And people don't tend to build many more Dire Avengers across the course of the game after your first couple die or you've stopped that phase, because generally Dire Avengers get AoE'd because they're low hit point, high damage infantry that are really fast and annoying, and people tend to switch to AoEs to kill them. And in the late game, they're probably not going to be around very much, so I don't think this is going to be very helpful. And this ability is almost useless. Shadow Spectres gain increased speed while their shields are up, does not stack with Fleet of Foot. No one cares, really, because Shadow Spectres are going to have Fleet of Foot, because Webway Teleport is so strong right now. It's on a 10-second cooldown and can teleport anywhere, which pretty much means that the Shadow Spectres are going to have Fleet of Foot anyways, which means this secondary bonus is not useful. All right. So what do we have? Next, we have the Warp Spiders. Let's take a look at what these guys do. The Warp Spiders are fairly high range DPS. They do 106 normal DPS with 36 melee DPS. Unfortunately, this normal damage. They have about 2,750 health. The thing about them is their range is not very good. So they're not a sniper style unit. They're much closer to like TAC Marine range than they are sniper range, which means they have to be fairly close. So they spend a lot of time. You can't focus fire particularly well with them. They spend a lot of time running towards their target, and they're doing normal damage at 5-point elite cost, which means you're probably 7 or 8 elite points into the game. We're starting to get pretty late in the game for normal damage being all that valuable. So what then are they used for? I guess they do okay damage to heroes. You can place them wherever you want with teleport. Like having 4 charges of teleport is pretty strong. And you can use teleport to teleport with them, right? So you can use the teleport they set up to teleport other units with them. Teleporting also increases their attack damage, so you are going to want to teleport around a little bit to up their attack damage. I'm not sure by how much. That would have been nice to look up. I should have perhaps done that when I was writing down their DPS. I'm kind of curious how much that increases it by. Does it show us anything? Probably not. Why are you teleporting back there? Yeah, they're out of range. Teleported them out of range and teleported your units away. That's terrible play, but I guess it does show that off a little bit. It is nice to have a movement effect for your guys. It's going to make chasing very nice again, and it might allow you to position Wraithguard somewhere really nasty or something like that. I could see the teleport portion being very, very strong. I wish I knew how much of a damage increase it was, because if you have 4 charges of something and it gives you a damage increase, that might make that quite good. However, that's pretty much all they do. They do slow mines. Slow mines are supposedly percentage damage, but they're a very, very weak ability in my opinion. I have yet to see pretty much any Eldar use this effectively, because it just doesn't seem to do a lot of damage. Yes, you can place mines. Fantastic. Okay. Can we see damage that it does? No. Oh, there's something running across the mines. Cool. How much damage? Pretty small amount of damage. Not a lot of time damage. Yeah. Okay, so that's really not that good, and the slow isn't that strong either. My suspicion is that it's just not good enough to really matter. Slow mines and the medium range damage on a normal damage at this stage in the game doesn't seem particularly strong to me. So what are they used for? I don't know, maybe that teleport. I guess you could think of some strategies perhaps where teleporting becomes extremely strong. Maybe it's another way to get Banshees in position, although invisible Banshees are already pretty damn strong and you can get those at 1 hero earlier. So what else? Maybe teleporting Reapers away, but it feels like a lot of micro, and using your hero's DPS as a escape mechanism isn't the strongest of things. Maybe teleporting Wraithguard around could be something, but I'm not entirely sure. You'd have to think about what you're using that for. If you figure out some very valuable thing, maybe in team games, maybe your allies can go through that. I'm not entirely sure if allies can activate that or not, but they probably can. And if allies could go through that, that might be a thing. You'd have to coordinate that over TeamSpeak, but teleporting something slow and high damage like a Dreadnought might be really nice. But you'd have to work to make that work. I kind of want to try it with the Dreadnought now. That sounds kind of fun. All right, let's take a look at the doctrines. When the Warp Spiders are deployed, the Fire Prism teleports to the target location and does bonus damage for duration. Well, teleports are good. Certainly, Fire Prisms do benefit from teleporting since they are very fragile. So getting them out of harm's way or in a good position would be nice, but Fire Prisms are pretty shit. They don't do very good damage, and they're very hard to control in a way that gets them doing their damage where you want them to do damage. So my suspicion is that probably makes a bad unit a little bit better, but that's probably not enough to justify using it. And the Viper plants a device that triggers based on proximity, causes slow in a circle. Mine effects are not that great, especially if the mine only slows. That doesn't feel like a very good ability to me either. Although Vipers are somewhat strong in 1v1 because they're basically a unit to end the game. After you dominated the early game as Eldar or come out ahead in the Eldar game, in the early game, you can then basically resource harass enough with Vipers that they can't really do anything to get back into the game. So perhaps some little bit buff to Vipers might be a thing, but my suspicion is we're not going to see a lot of Warp Spider play unless this teleport is significantly better than I'm expecting, just because the rest of their abilities just don't really stack up with the other stuff. I mean, if we compare these 3 heroes, we have a little bit of a win more versus infantry. Perhaps that would be useful if infantry counters Eldar in some way that we haven't quite seen yet. So maybe this will be good at some point versus fixed infantry. But really, the buff to Banshees seems stronger than either of these, and probably waiting to deploy any of these 3. You deploy your 2-point hero and then either go straight to your 7 or possibly your 9-point is probably stronger than wasting your time on any of these. But that's just my first take on it. I'd be curious if you guys have stories of how Autarkaire or Warp Spiders were doing things that weren't predicted in this video, or particularly the Warp Spiders. I'd love to hear some of the great things Warp Spiders have done. Like maybe Warp Spiders are like a combo with the Wraith Knight Taldir to teleport Wraith Knight Taldir in, or possibly things like that I could see being really strong. If that teleport has some really nice hidden combos that aren't immediately apparent, then I'd love to hear about those, because that would be pretty cool. So let me know, guys, especially if you have little clips of it or something like that. I'd love to see some clips of Warp Spiders being badass. That'd be kind of cool. I love seeing heroes and unique units being done in ways that are different than most people expect. Anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy it, please hit the subscribe button and come check out the rest of my content, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.